So this morning, I prayed that I bring this meditation diligently and from my heart. So in the mornings, the worship teams gets together and we have good discussions about God and Jesus and His Word. And right now, we're discussing the fruit of the Spirit. And from Galatians 5, 22, 23. And each one of us has been selected to represent and dissect each fruit of the Spirit. And so I received love this past week. And that got me thinking about how Jesus is the perfect example of the fruit of the Spirit and love. He shows us the example of each trait that we should keep. In doing so, Jesus' entire ministry was characterized by love, and the greatest demonstration of love was the sacrifice that he gave for all of us. Jesus, who was a divine being with the Father, sacrificed his heavenly power and glory to become a human being and subject himself to painful humiliation, suffering, and death for the sake of mankind. As we know, Jesus died for us and for our sins, and we partake of the bread representing his body and the juice representing his blood. During his last meal, his words in John 15, 9 and 10, "As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments, and abide in his love." And also in John 15, 12 through 14, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you." That hits hard. So as we take the body and the blood, just please take deep thought and remembrance and remembering what Jesus has done for each one of us and what a true friend and Savior he really is. Please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, God, you are an awesome friend. God, you've given us the ability to love. God, through your representation, through your love and dying for us, God, you've just given us strength to overcome death, to overcome sin. God, allow us to trust you. Allow us to put all of our faith into you. God, Jesus dying for us and just allowing us to remember each thing that he went through. And it was all for us. God, we just ask that you please bless us today. Bless us as we take this communion in remembrance of you. We love you. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
during this time, we're going to go ahead and pray for the offering. And I've just been really encouraged, and I'm excited to encourage. I'm excited for Mike or myself is going to encourage you guys on, what we've done over the past couple of weeks with our finances. But not only that, just the heart of giving of Tyler Street, to give towards missions and to give towards how God is blessed and just expecting God to do more. So we're going to pray for that offering, but just as a thankfulness for God's people in doing that. So let's pray. Father in heaven, God, we are overwhelmed at times, God, and probably should be overwhelmed more about how amazing you are and how you work and move in different ways, God. And so I am thankful for the opportunities that you give us, the opportunities to do good, the opportunities to see you work and move, God. And one of those areas is in our tithes and offerings, God. So I just pray that you bless each one if this is their week to give, God, or bless us as we try to help and do more in our own mission field here, but also abroad, God. God, be with us now as we change our hearts and minds to hear what you're doing in different areas of the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You get these fancy shirts, and they're so hot, man. Just, I don't know why we do it. Well, I've got Victoria helping me here today. Come on over, Victoria. What's cool about the junior church and what they do is they're helping us keep track of this, and they color it in about our weekly giving towards missions. And so each one, after they get done, they get to choose another one, and then they take this downstairs and fill it in. So where we're at for the month is we're doing good, and I'm usually, like I said last week, we come in at like the end of the month. We're like, that's where we're just going to blow it out of the water. But where we're at right now is we actually raised another almost $1,500. So we're at $4,500 for the month, which is awesome. That is really good. Thank you, Victoria. You can take that downstairs. Not only is it awesome, and it's cool to just be a part of it and doing it as a church through the week, keeping it in front of us each and every day. Ooh. One thing I want to tell you guys is I've told you about being creative with this, right? One way that we have been creative with it is I know of people that are doing things as side hustles, and those side hustles, they're donating those proceeds to the mission field. You're like, well, I don't got a side hustle. Well, some people do. And there's two that are actually going to be presented to you guys next week to participate in. And so it's two ladies. The first one is Moni. Everybody knows Moni, but Moni is phenomenal with finding the painful places in your shoulders and making them more painful. And we paid it for that. It's so cool. But what Moni has decided to do over this month is what she makes and what she's made during doing that, she's going to give to missions. And so she wanted an opportunity for the church to be involved. So next week, she's going to have her chair set up here inside the prayer and hospitality room, and she's going to be giving 20-minute backhand, make you feel like you're in the worst pain, and then when you leave, you're in the best pain, I guess, for it. So if that's something that you're interested in, please, 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 it's just by donation only. That's it. So whatever, she's going to have a little card there that says what she normally charges, what this is, but it's just an opportunity for you to participate in missions in that way, and I'm so thankful for Moni for doing that. But also, Heidi is phenomenal with the camera, and I meant to this morning have my family pictures up here because we just got done shooting our family pictures, and somehow out of the chaos and the wreckage of family pictures, she is able to pull beautiful moments where you're like, that does not represent what was going on at all. But it's gorgeous. And so what Heidi's going to do is next week, if you would like to get your portrait, family, friends, whatever it is, we're going to set up a little spot. She's going to take 5 different shots, and she's going to send them over to you. And if you've gotten photographers before, you know how valuable that is. That is just so cool. So thank you, Moni. Thank you, Heidi, for offering that. And not only that, yeah, absolutely. So look forward to that for next week. All of it's going towards missions. All of it's to raise missions. But I don't know if you guys noticed, but, they put a coat of paint on the church building over the past couple of days. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize how much stucco is the worst thing to paint in the world, but I have learned. And so there's a couple guys that we just need to recognize as a church. If you could show, these guys right here. We're just so thankful for these guys. You don't know if you know who they are. On the right there is Mike Stanley, and this project does not even get started without Mike Stanley. And that's what Mike has done over the past couple weeks to get this place ready to be doing this. I don't know if you've seen the stairway right here, but then also the stairway in the back for the emergency exit for the nursery. I mean, we thought we could keep some of the bones. Nope, he had to rebuild the whole thing. And then not only that, get this structurally sound, not only that, working on all that. And he had help from David Knight as well. So David, Mike, thank you so much for the work that you've put in during the week, taking time out of your guys' day. But not only that, we could not have painted and got as far as we did without Randy Stanley, who's on the left. So Randy, Mike, David, the other men that showed up yesterday to help us out, thank you, thank you, thank you. Part one, you guys see that we have a little bit more to do. So what that means is we're not painting today, because I don't know if you saw outside, but the Lord just wants us to get together, hang out. So we will have lunch after today's service. We will have lunch downstairs. There are some fall festival projects that we need to get done, a few of them. So please go by the Connect Center. If you're going to stick around and help us out, we've got things for you to do. We've got projects to be done. But if you're like, hey, I can just stick around for lunch, man, we've got a great team here that's going to be telling us about the mission for lighting the Ethiopian path. I'm going to turn it over to Bob. And children, you are dismissed to kids' church, so you guys can make all the ruckus in the world.
Okay. All right. Good morning. It's an awkward position to be in. You know, I mean, I'm just here saying you've got a guest speaker introducing guest speakers. One of the great privileges of both Smee and I are to know Dereje and Mindy and his family for a number of years. Before lighting the Ethiopian path was only a dream, when it was an idea, and it was an idea that was born in Dereje's heart. And one of the things that we've seen over the years, and he and his team have been here for at least the last 4 years, that we've had Mission Awareness Month. And one of the things that we see now is that we see a commitment to faithfulness. We see a commitment to consistency. And what we've come to know and love is that when the rest of us are involved in our daily routine in life, doing the things that we have to do, here's what we know. We know that Dereje, morning, noon, and night's heart is in Ethiopia. Now, you remember he and his family are back down at Pepperdine in Malibu. Mindy works for the university, but Dereje continues to make numerous trips during the year, continues to have constant contact with the dear ones that are there doing the boots on the ground work. Today, it's especially nice. You've got two young men. You know, from my perspective, everybody's a young man. But we have Phil, raise your hand, Phil, and then Tim, raise your hand, Tim. Tim is actually going to be involved in communication with us. I know that's something that we've been concerned about and want more of. And so from now on, if you don't think you're hearing enough about Ethiopia, Tim will give you his personal cell phone number, and he'll let you call him anytime, day or night, to say, what's up in Ethiopia? And Phil's just a nice guy that wanted to travel with these guys for the weekend. So we're going to turn it over to these men, and we'll find out what exactly is going on in Ethiopia. This is Tim, and the others will come up soon enough.
Thank you, Bob. Hey, good morning, everyone. It's really good to meet you. Thank you so much for your hospitality, particularly Bob and Smee. We've got to spend the weekend with them, and it's a priceless thing to have like a warm family-like welcome when you travel somewhere that you've never been. I've never been to the Sacramento area, so thank you for your hospitality. Thank you to this church, though, for your hospitality. I say that particularly, though, on behalf of your long-term hospitality and warmth and generosity to Dereje and the work that he's been doing. As Bob mentioned, my name is Tim. So we come from the Hollywood Church of Christ. That's kind of the connection here, right? So Dereje has been, since his time in the States, he's been connected to the Hollywood Church of Christ. Phil has been there for quite a long time as well. I'm a newcomer. I've only been there about 5 years. I work there. I just recently started working there in an official ministry capacity, but that's really completely irrelevant to why I'm here this morning. And I mean that because I went to Ethiopia before I was working in that capacity. And as will probably be no surprise to you, Dereje came up to me and started talking to me. Almost, I don't know why in some ways, right? It's not like he said, that's the guy, that's the preacher here or something like that. I need you to go to Ethiopia and do some things. He just said, hey, let's start talking. Have you ever thought about going to Ethiopia? And no, I have not actually. It just kind of went from there. We talked over the last couple of years. COVID kind of complicated some potential travel plans, and then I was finally able to go with him this last April. I was over there for a while in Ethiopia, and then also some time in Kenya with him. I had reservations, though. I didn't know if I wanted to go, if I should go. I have a wife and 2 kids, very young kids, 3-year-old, 1-year-old. I was trying to balance going between jobs, not knowing when one job was going to work in the film industry, so working these gigs, right? So one gig ends, another starts. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how to kind of sort these things out. Dereje, of course, was just like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Also, that question of what am I going to do? Are you really sure you need me to go to Ethiopia? I really don't have much input or expertise that I can see how it would connect to anything you're doing. I have some just broad questions and maybe reservations. I mean, people, outsiders going to Africa and doing things, maybe some challenges there, maybe some history that hasn't always been the best. I mean, do I need to go get involved in something there that could be complicated? But, when it's your friend, when it's not just an abstract reality, when it's your friend, someone from Ethiopia, someone who's involved on the ground over there, who's not an outsider who's come in and said, I want to make some changes here. It's someone who's coming from that background and saying, I've seen the gospel at work over here. I've seen the good things that God is doing. I know you can't quite piece it together yourself, but come with me. Trust me. It'll be worthwhile for you to come. So I share that, too, to say I don't know that I'm particularly the best person to be standing here talking to this morning. I think there's other people in this room who could tell you more about Ethiopia itself, whether just from Dereje could tell you, of course, more from a personal experiential point of view. There's other people maybe who could talk to you about the history of Ethiopia more, give you a better perspective than me. But Dereje asked me to share just because I'm a set of fresh eyes. And he thought that was valuable for me to share a few things about what I saw, what I experienced when we were over there recently. All right, so that being said, do I just press the green button now? Oh, no, never mind. There we go. So that's what I want to start with today. I just want to share with you some of my impressions. I'm sure you all have heard Dereje. Most of you have probably heard Dereje talk before. You've probably seen photos, heard stories, things like that. This is the view from, all 3 of these are actually the view from our hotel. I've never been to Africa before. I've not actually done a lot of international travel. We got to Addis Ababa. It was dark. We got to the hotel late at night, but this is the view, in the morning when it comes up, what I saw from the hotel. It's gorgeous, right? Ethiopia is a beautiful country, make no mistake about it. Beautiful skyline for the city. That picture all the way on the right, you can kind of see it's framed. This is actually a rooftop view. Dereje was a good host. Dereje took me to a nice hotel where we're this is a rooftop view where we would actually go every night and eat dinner, and there's a band playing and things like that. You can actually see some of that here. There on the left, that's the band that several nights would play on this rooftop, and people would come and just hang out, enjoy dinner, watch the band play. And Dereje, he said, I want to show you everything, right? So he took me, you see him in the middle there, that's a restaurant he took me to, which was just an amazing experience of the process of, is it Ethiopian coffee? We sat down and went through this whole process, and then lunch after that, which you can see on the top right there. It's amazing food. Beneath the picture of food, you'll see a picture of, I don't know what you call this place, but it's kind of it was a dinner performance place of sorts, right? So you'd eat dinner, you sit down, you're eating dinner, delicious Ethiopian food. And then there's people performing songs and dances, which are representative of all the tribes that are present in Ethiopia, right? So it was kind of like we were there for a couple hours, and it's this like crash course in the tribal history of Ethiopia, and you're just getting a small taste of many beautiful things about Ethiopian culture. And beyond that, there were just many beautiful cultural experiences, such as this bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a picture of a wedding ceremony of sorts. There was a celebration. I think it wasn't the ceremony proper, but one of the employees that works for Lighting the Ethiopian Path at the juvenile prison was getting married, and so they wanted to celebrate, right? So one of the days, a ton of people came in, family, friends, all, of course, the staff, the boys and the girls who were part of the prison, got in a big room. All kinds of wonderful food was brought out, which I could not eat because Dereje was being very guarded with me about what I could not eat so I don't get sick, which was really heartbreaking. But it was beautiful to see these people celebrating their marriage, spending time together, celebrating. And that was a beautiful moment, too, because, it's people getting up and doing the equivalent of like wedding toasts and things like that. And I was kind of amazed about how half of these wedding toasts were about the couple, and the other half, I think, were about Dereje, which really showed me something about who Dereje is, his place in this community there, and his importance and how he functions there. So I saw a beautiful, exciting part of Ethiopia. But as Dereje said to me multiple times, like, I want to show you everything. I'm going to show you the good, the bad, the ugly. These are not my photos. I think maybe one of my, greatest regrets about taking photos or not photos, I was trying to be careful. You don't want to be that awkward tourist in certain situations who's like putting a camera in someone's face when it's really inappropriate. So there's a lot of instances where I didn't take photos. I didn't take photos of the kids, things like that. But because I was reserved in certain cases, there's just certain things that are in my mind that I wish I had a picture of. I wish I could show it to you right now. A lot of those are actually the small things, just traveling around. As someone who had never been to Ethiopia or Africa at all, it's just an interesting experience to get in a car and drive around the streets, right? Just to see what's different from driving around the streets of LA where I live. And these are some things, I tried to find photos that were just representative of memories I have that have really stuck with me. So top right, you can just kind of see, crowded city street in Addis Ababa. Pretty typical of what it might look like. Driving there is very different than what I'm used to. The traffic there feels more like a living organism of cars and human beings that don't stop, and you do your best to navigate that. So I'm sure some of you maybe had experiences like that in other contexts. I was very thankful to be a passenger my whole time that I was there and to observe that. But top left hand, you see just the markets. I have a lot of memories of like going to these markets. We had a fun day. We were going out getting food and supplies for that wedding celebration. And it was just amazing to see the places we would go to, the people selling, whether it's fruits and vegetables or we went to a store for a wedding cake, all that kind of stuff. Bottom left, driving down the street, going past all buses and cars and things like that. And then you see a guy, herding his goats down the street, weaving in and out of the traffic sometimes. And then bottom right, I'll never forget, pretty common, you'll stop at a traffic light and there's children who just run up to the car right away. They'll be asking for something or maybe wanting to sell you something, but they're looking for money, right? And that kind of stuff, it's all together, right? I've shown you two different slides, the kind of like exciting cultural slides, and then these slides, which are just kind of the down on the street experience. But of course, those experiences are constantly overlapping and crossing with each other. And even those pictures of the hotel, you can't really see it in those beautiful pictures I showed you because it's far away, but we had this amazing hotel we were staying in, and then right outside there's people who are just living on the street, right? Or they're living in shelters which are clearly just like pieced together out of scrap metal and other items that they've found. Different worlds on top of each other at the same time. Very different from my world day to day. I mentioned before a little bit about my background. So part of coming here was, I was leaving things for a brief amount of time, leaving a wife, 2 young kids. But I was also leaving the center of my universe, right? So I'm not originally from LA. I moved to LA about 5 years ago to work in the film industry there. And if you've been to LA, you've probably noticed it's kind of a movie town, right? No surprise. So I remember that very first time I visited LA, I was driving around, and it's just like billboard after billboard after billboard. It's like the same movie. It's like they don't want you to forget as you're driving down the block that this one movie's coming out this Friday, right? Like here's 3 billboards in a row to remind you, this is what the universe is about. This is what's happening here. And I'm part of that, right? I was part of the siren call of LA. You coming here to pursue a career, to pursue something that is important, and this whole town is dedicated to this idea. I can't tell you how many places I've been in where I hear people wax eloquent about how important movie making is and how important the stories we tell are, et cetera, et cetera. No doubt. Truth in that, right? There's truth. The stories we tell about ourselves and our experiences are important. The way we communicate with each other in our culture is important. When I'm driving down the streets of Ethiopia, you can probably guess how many billboards I saw for American movies, or maybe you can. I expected maybe I would see a couple, right? I was thinking globalization, right? I don't think I saw any advertisement, anything that was trying to sell me something or tell me something about my life back in LA. Nothing that's trying to tell me about, this industry, which is the center of my world, the center of my universe. And I remember even asking Dereje, I'm like, hey, just trying to experience Ethiopian culture here. Maybe we should go to a movie, just catch it. What's an Ethiopian movie like, right? And see what that's like. We didn't do that. It would have been possible. There were some movie theaters around, but not a lot. Not like Hollywood where I'm at, where it's pretty much every corner there's a different kind of movie theater. And I share that to say it was this reminder of a concept I knew, but maybe I'd never fully experienced in quite this way, that my world, my focus, Hollywood, California, as big as Los Angeles is, as much cultural influence as it has, is actually not the center of the universe. Obvious, right? Truism. Like we all know that truism, right? Like your world is not the center of the universe. There's billions of other people out there who are having their own experiences right now that are not what you are experiencing right here in Sacramento. They're not what I've been experiencing since I've returned home to Hollywood. But to feel it in a different kind of way really drives the point home. And I started to have this feeling about all these goals and ambitions, which I don't think are hollow or worthless or anything like that, but all these things that I've felt and experienced, the reasons why I moved to LA, they're suddenly feeling smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was seeing these faces I'm driving around and realizing that there's a lot of people that I'm looking at who have very different concerns, very different priorities. And that really was something that stuck with me when I came home. I think that was my big takeaway of like, there's a world there. It's a big world. There's a lot going on, and I don't have much to do with it. The things I'm trying to do, the things I think are important, are not at the center of everyone's universe. And to me, that led to some deeper questions and some reflection I've done since coming back about missions, why we do missions. I love so much that you guys are taking this month to think about missions, to remind yourselves of missions, to remind of ways of reaching out. And I was thinking about that. I don't want to presume much because I don't know you very well. I don't want to presume much about how you approach missions or the way you think about missions. I think about my own background and the way maybe in the past I've thought about missions. It's going and doing something somewhere else, and let's use some of our resources, some of our agency to accomplish something, maybe to fix something, to boost something up, to convert other people to the gospel. And given the context I just gave you, I felt this idea coming to fruition more and more again, that my agency isn't as big of a deal as I thought it was, right? Whatever money I have is not the magic key to fix the world or to unlock God's kingdom in a different place. It's often the other different things that escape our attention that are more central to the gospel. And that kind of mentality, anyway, of going to a place like Africa or going to a place like Ethiopia in particular might not work very well if you're thinking about, let's just take some money and resources and go set up a program and it's going to fix everything. We're going to convert some people to Christianity. It might not work particularly well. Ethiopia, very specifically, it might not be the best paradigm for going to a country that has a very rich history of Christianity, right? Deep Orthodox roots. And of course, there's a complicated history there. There's a recent history is very complicated, but that was something beautiful to see when I was there as well. This picture on the left is from a museum that we went to that's shares some of the history of Ethiopia. And you can see the pictures there. This is a particular part of the exhibit that talks about the faiths that have had a profound influence on the country of Ethiopia. So Christianity, of course, has a long, profound influence on the people of Ethiopia, but also Islam, Judaism. Bottom right-hand corner, you'll see this was it was a small church, but really was it's not a church that was used for, it's an Orthodox site, but it's not used for large masses or anything like that. There's actually several Ethiopian officials who are buried there. And so Dereje took me with a guide and we went down. It was really interesting. We went underneath the church and we saw the tombs of these Ethiopian leaders. And they also showed us these ancient texts in Ge'ez, this old script, Ethiopian script. And we got to see some of the very tangible history that is intertwined with the faith of people of Ethiopia. Lots of history, which I have nothing to do with. And I started to think about all these things that are going on that are very important, that I've been totally ignorant of and aware of and disconnected from. And I started to think about aspects of the gospel story that underline that idea. Started to think about the woman in Mark 14. Remember the woman who anoints Jesus' feet, and people complain about it. And Jesus chastises them, and you remember what he says. He's like, actually, this woman who you think is a nobody, who you're complaining that she's wasting this perfume that she's brought in, people are going to, whenever they tell the gospel, whenever the good news is spread for generations to come, we're going to tell her story. It's actually not going to be your story. The people who are sitting around the table who maybe think they're a who's who at that dinner party. People are going to generations tell this woman's story because she gets something about the gospel here. Or think even about the apostles, Jesus' followers who spread the word. It's amazing how little we know about them and their lives, their backgrounds, their biographies. You guys, I don't know if any of you watched The Chosen. Some of us at our church have been watching through The Chosen recently, and I had a friend send me a message. They're like, "Oh, hey, Tim, I've been going through The Chosen. Got me really interested in the history that's there, right? Like, what do we know about the lives of the apostles? Can you recommend a book that tells me just like all the stuff about like, the biographies? I want the biography of all the apostles, right? And kind of know where they were born, what they did, what shaped them as a kid, and then they went there and did this." And I was like, I don't know that there's a ton of historical information. And I'm like, oh, look, maybe I can find a book that I haven't been aware of. There's not much that has been passed down about the things that shaped Peter as a little boy. Or Paul we get biography through things he says in his letters, of course, right? But isn't it interesting how little the personal lives of the apostles seem to not just factor into the history of the church, but also their own writings, right? They don't seem to think it's that important that you understand this is who I am. Quite the opposite, right? That's and that's really just the heart of what I wanted to share with you this morning. What I brought back from Ethiopia was that hope and that prayer. Just to remind you more than that, I think you've been paying attention to Ethiopia. I wanted to ask you on behalf of Dereje, do not forget Ethiopia. It's so easy. I know, whether it's the things you're driving around every day trying to do, your job, or it's the things that are occupying the news, right? Our news cycle. I'm guessing even in terms of international news, in the last couple weeks, your mind has not been in Ethiopia, right? Your mind's probably been somewhere else. Not that there's anything wrong with hearing the difficult situation in Jerusalem, in Israel, in Gaza. So much there to think through, so much that it's important. But then it's easy to forget that while there are thousands of people who have already died there, there's estimated, I think I read 600,000 people who have died over the course of a couple years in the wars in Ethiopia. It's probably more than that. There are worlds that have so much going on that are not in our headlines. So missions is a chance for us to say, God, we are not the good news. We are not the gospel. You are bringing the good news to earth. We are part of your story. We are more than likely a small footnote in your story. And Dereje is going to come in a second. We're going to talk through a few more specific updates and things that are going on. But that is my prayer for us this morning, to remember that in the kingdom, we're very small. We're not the center stage of what is going on. When people tell the story of the gospel in world history in the far and distant future in ways we can't imagine, I guarantee you the story of Tim in LA is not going to be front and center. It might surprise us, though, what God has done in places like Ethiopia, places that we've been inclined to not think too much about, to forget about quickly because other things occupy our attention. And that, of course, is one of the special things about the ministry that Dereje is a part of, is it very much has the fingerprints of the gospel all over it in terms of its methodology and the way he approaches missions. Again, the gospel is not a program we export to exercise our own agency, to use our own money to affect change and do things we would like to do. The gospel is a manifestation of the incarnation. Right? I think about some of those comments in communion this morning. God here among us. So it should not surprise us when the clearest pictures of the gospel are people who are willing to get down into the dirty details. And people are willing to spend time with prisoners, with youth who are in prisons in Ethiopia, in places in the world that we're quick to forget because we have the luxury of not having to remember about that on a daily basis. So thank God for those who are more attuned to his spirit than me. Thank God for those who listen. Dereje and Phil, if you want to go ahead and come up. What we want to do is I want to just share some very specific things now about things I saw, updates that have happened maybe since you all got an update from Dereje. Grab a seat. And then we want to have time for questions. I know we don't have a ton of time, but just in case there's a few questions, I wanted to give some time for that. So real quick to go here through some things. So this is a picture of the entrance to the juvenile prison in Addis Ababa. And this is the, you all have probably heard, Bob and others have probably shared with you that there was an old prison and there's a new prison. I want to show, just in case you'd forgotten or hadn't seen, this is the entryway to the old prison. And this is where a lot of, this is where you would go in the distance, you'd enter through a gate. And this is a picture of really the main courtyard. So it's like the prison itself was basically this big courtyard that's used as a soccer field by the kids most of the time. And there's buildings surrounding it that they use for various things. But it's not that big. It's really just this makeshift soccer field and a handful of buildings that are around it. And these are some of the buildings, some of the things inside. So on the top right, you can see some beds and some lockers, some laundry. On the bottom right, you can see kitchen. That's the kitchen where they would prepare all the meals. In the middle there, you see some of the beds, the bunks that the kids would sleep in. And on the left, this is the boy. This is all in photos I took in the boys' area. This is the bathroom for the boys. So this is their day-to-day, what they're living with, what they'd experience. But one of the exciting things that we can share with you is, so when I went there, when we were there briefly, this is where all the kids were. About a week after I left, they started moving. And by the time Dereje went back, he helped them and they moved. And this is now where the kids are. A little different, right? To contrast what we just looked at, top right-hand corner there, a more inviting toilet for sure. Top left, you'll see some of the beds. Bottom right is just one of the many buildings. The facility is much bigger. There's a lot of buildings that are there. Bottom left, you'll see what's a big assembly room. It's a multi-purpose room. It's where we had this wedding celebration that was there. And so Dereje, all the kids are there now, right? And it's about how many kids that can fit in this one now?
They build for 300 or 400, they said. But anytime when there is more kids, they don't care, they bring it. But they work for 400 kids to put there.
So they could hold up to 400 kids. There's not that many there now, but it could hold up to 400. So lots of room to grow. And lots of other just like exciting small. So, I mean, this is just a world of difference, right? Like you can just see from the pictures, like this is just such a huge change for these kids in their daily experience, just the facilities they're staying in. And there's been other improvements. Like when I took these photos, the facility was empty, right? Because I was there like a week before they moved in. So since they've moved in, there have been other changes that have made, things like TVs for the kids, so they can watch soccer games, things like that. This is cool. This is a huge like gardening area. And you said they've started to like actually plant some things there, right? So that's something else. What kind of stuff are they planting, do you know?
Each kids, they plant, green cabbage, carrot, and potato because it grows fast and they can eat it there, and also they get money. When they release, when they go home, they can have some money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's, obviously just a huge resource to have a space that they can actually do stuff like that, that can get creative with what they're doing with the kids, which they could not do before. This is the girls' home. So again, I'm sorry, I'm assuming that, again, a certain level of familiarity with some of the things that Dereje has been doing. If I need to clarify some of this stuff in the Q&A, but we definitely can. But maybe I should just restate, like the two main places that I went to in Ethiopia, I saw work they've been doing. Letting the Ethiopian Path, of course, has done a variety of things over the years. But the two things I saw very up close were, one, the boys and girls, but the juvenile prison you just saw. And then this is a girls' home. So this was, Dereje can correct me if I'm wrong on this. What's that?
Queen Manan.
Queen Menon, yeah. Yeah, so this is it's a facility. It used to be the Queen's, like decades ago. Yeah. And it was passed along eventually after her death. I don't know what decade, but it was given to this purpose of it's going to be a girls' home. Yeah, girl orphanage, yeah. So it's been that for a while, but in the last year or so, they basically some officials came to Dereje and said, hey, we've noticed you're doing some interesting things. We've noticed some of the changes that have happened at the prison. How would you like to help us out here? And Dereje, I don't think will mind me sharing, that idea terrified him. He didn't, I don't know anything about running a girls' orphanage or anything like that. But again, it's an opportunity where because of things he's doing, people seeing something, people seeing the gospel in action, right? Seeing like these kids are being transformed, not just because they're getting, a nicer place to sleep or anything like that, though that is a manifestation of the gospel on earth in a certain way. It's also because of cultural changes he's making, right? Like the kids having access to Bibles, and there's other things that are like cultural changes among the kids, right? Like how they behave, how they interact with each other, things that are very tangible differences that people take notice of. And so they say, hey, something's going on here. What can you do here? And so we got to go and see this facility and tour it. So these are a couple of the buildings. There's several buildings that are there. And there's many exciting things about it, right? It's beautiful in terms of just like there's the greenery. It's these big buildings, which, again, used to have like this royal purpose, and now they're being repurposed here. And so these are just some shots of, things you'll see walking around, everything from a playground, bottom right, to you can see some of the laundry there. More gardening space here as well, stuff that's being grown. You can see one of the girls' rooms there in the middle. That picture on the left, you see it's just laundry hanging in the window, and it's probably too small for you to really see here, but in the distance, there's like girls they're washing their laundry like outside, and they bring it in and they're drying it. So just day-to-day life, this is kind of, some of the things you'll see. But there's challenges too. So on the left, you'll see a lot of the rooms were just sitting empty, full of things that are broken or not fully utilized. That middle picture there is one of the girls' bedrooms. It might actually be the same one from this previous slide that I just showed you. This is a girl's bedroom, but then like you see there's a chunk of the ceiling that is, getting ready to fall. There's been a leak there. And then this is like a door to one of the girls' rooms. I remember just walking by and they're like down the hallway and there's just, big hole in the door. So there's a lot of things that need some attention, right? And that's part of why they're turning to Dereje and saying, hey, we could use your help here. But again, it's not just these, Mr. Fix-It project types of things. They're not looking to Dereje simply because he's a renowned handyman in Ethiopia or something like that, right? They recognize that he brings in a lot of things, a perspective that is far more valuable than just being a skilled handyman or knowing which guy to hire to come, fix these things, something like that. And these are just some other recent happenings. These are pictures from so I guess I should back up a tiny bit. So these are big things that have happened in this last year, right? Obviously, the biggest one is what I showed you a few minutes ago, of transferring the kids from this old facility to the new facility. It's a huge change. Coming into Dereje, stepping into this role where he's now going to be assisting with this girls' facility is another big change. And overseeing some of the stuff there, there's a lot of needs that have to be addressed there, things that need to happen there. But the work LEP does is, of course, constant. There's so many small things, and this is just one example of another small thing. So this was Ethiopian New Year, which is in September, right? September 11th is the Ethiopian New Year, and so this is something that Lighting the Ethiopian Path did. And where was this at? Like, where did this take place at? That's what I thought. Okay, so this is the new facility, right? The new facility where all the kids are staying, but it was this big bash for Ethiopian New Year, food, bringing people in. So obviously you can see the crowd here. It's not just the kids, right? So you can see bottom right-hand corner there. There's a lot of people in wheelchairs that were just people who lived in the area.
Next, behind our building, and behind the new prison, they live those wheelchair people. As I said, they ask to come holiday to celebrate with kids. So I told them they can come, they can eat.
Yeah. So it's a small thing, but it's one of these very tangible things. Like, this is the kind of stuff that they do. And looking ahead, I'll share this last thing, and then I really wanted to make time for questions, so I'll just share one more thing, and we'll have some time for questions. But I know you all have heard examples of other things Dereje has done. I think Ian, when you were making those comments about what are we going to do when we go? Well, that's an interesting question, right? So much of what Dereje is good at, and I mean, there's a lot of things that could be said here about cultural differences and kind of how things happen there and get done, but it's also just like a skill that Dereje has, an openness that he has to go and to pivot and to change and say, I see a need, and I'm going to respond to that need. And you never know when it's going to blossom into something much bigger, right? Like, you asked Dereje a few years ago, he would not have told you he's going to be have some staff working at a juvenile prison in Ethiopia, right? That's not like a concrete plan he laid out, decades ago. I got to get to this point. No, it's needs that come to him, and he responds to. And last story I'll share with you, I experienced this firsthand, just like this. You need to, that's why Lighting the Ethiopian Path is really unique and powerful to me, because of that adaptive ability, right? And it's that ability it has to go into a place and respond to things. So after we were in Addis Ababa, we flew down to Nairobi. And, from what I remember, Dereje, I think, had told me, we're going to go down to Nairobi. I just kind of want you to see it. It's really different. We'll just kind of see some different things. We're just going to check it out. It's good for you to see this place. I'm like, okay. So about, I think, a day or so before we go to Nairobi, he's like, yeah, we're going to go to the prison. And I'm like, I'm like, no, Dereje, you mean you're still talking about Ethiopia? I'm talking about Nairobi. What are we doing in Nairobi? And he's like, yeah, we're going to the prison in Nairobi. And I was like, I don't remember you ever talking about a prison before. And so he's like, oh yeah, there's a prison down there. Okay, I'm sure there are prisons down there, but what are you talking about? Yeah, there's a prison down there, and we're going to. Why are we going to the prison? Well, we might do some things. That's and do something. What do you mean we might do some things? We got to see, right? We got to go check it out. Things might be happening there in the future. So I'm like, all right. So this was unexpected, and we're driving in the car. We get to Nairobi. We're driving in the car, heading over to this prison, and Dereje is like, yeah, okay, so we're going to get there, and you need to speak. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Speak about what? To who? And I was like, Dereje, I'm good. I don't feel a need to say anything, right? I'm just here to learn. And he's like, yeah, no, it's fine. You'll speak. It's good. So we get there and get out of the car, and it's just like, straight from, again, I didn't know this place existed 24 hours prior, or that it was like on the agenda, for us to visit. We walk in. This is not a juvenile prison. This is an adult male prison. Very different experience, just in terms of the atmosphere. There's so much I could share with you there about just like, impressions of like the facilities there and the atmosphere there, the culture there. It's a tough space. And we walk in. He takes us straight to a chapel that's there, and they're already in the middle of a service. There's some pastor there who's, got the crowd going and things like that. And I was like, yeah, Tim, come on, speak, let's go. So I did. I got up there. I shared. I don't remember what I said. I'm sure they don't remember either. I'm sure it was not great, but that was I was really resistant to that at first because I was like, no, Dereje, I gotta prepare, right? You don't understand. Like, I gotta think. I have some questions. Who are these people? What's their background? What's their story? How can I connect with them? That kind of thing. And he's like, no, just speak. Just share something. Share something, and it will be meaningful to them. And I did, and it was great. Everyone was so warm and inviting. We spent hours there with the prisoners, touring the facility and seeing some things that are going there, talking to them about ways lighting the Ethiopian path can potentially help that prison, and just also chatting one-on-one with prisoners. And, I learned a little something there about when there's an opportunity in front of you, sometimes it's important just to say, I don't have this figured out, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to respond and give what I can, pray to God for his guidance. And I also learned just say yes to Dereje. And that's why I'm in Sacramento today. As Dereje said, now you got to go to Sacramento. So that's all I'm going to share for now. I'm sorry, last thing. It's a picture I snapped at the girls' home that I just had to share with you. So I don't know if you can read that. This was just a pillar for a little gazebo type of thing where that was in the middle of the facility there. And it says, every new day is another chance to change your life. Don't know who wrote that or when, but it was touching to me, and I figured it was worth sharing. So thank you for listening. So we'd love to hear if you have any questions, particularly for Dereje. Obviously, this guy's far more knowledgeable about the things that are going on, but that's a little piece of my perspective for whatever it's worth. Sure.
All right, who's got a question?
Hey, while you think of your question, I just want to share. You may or may not know that part of the reason for the presence in Nairobi, Kenya, which is a totally different country, is that one of the things that Lighting the Ethiopian Path has followed God on is following refugees because of the war in Ethiopia. So just like Dereje followed the children who were living on the streets on the median of the highway, and then one day they just disappeared because they were all scooped up and put into a prison, and now there's a prison ministry, and and then with the soccer ministry, well, one of the things that he's been doing is keeping up with Jesus, and Jesus is walking really fast, and that's with the girls' home now, and then also with refugees fleeing from Ethiopia to Kenya.
Wow. All right here.
So when you say prison, to me that doesn't look very secure. It looks like they can just come and go. So is it really an orphanage or a children's home, or are these really hardcore criminal kids?
Yeah, the answer, so it is a prison, but it's definitely different, right? And actually, Dereje could tell you, the kids do come and go sometimes, right? The kids, I think sometimes you send them on errands, right? Yeah. So it's a minimum security would be the way for us to think about it. But so it's definitely a different atmosphere than you might think of prison with, extreme security lockdowns. There are guards around, but it's not like the kids could escape if they want to. But they tend to not do that, and they tend to come back if they do leave, right?
Yeah, most kids, they are not trying to go because the prison is better. But sometimes they escape, and police, they find them and they bring them. But it is not that much secured. It is not that much, good fence or good guard. But we make for them, to be there and to love it. Most of them, street kids, most of them, they came from remote, bad area. So for them, there is the best place.
Before Dereje became a presence or requested presence at the prison, the common way of dealing with whatever was happening with the kids was, you beat the kids, and the kids are beating each other. And then Dereje shows up and says, why do these kids have bruises on them? That's not going to happen anymore. And so it's not happening anymore. And he doesn't have positional authority, he doesn't have a title, but he has granted authority. People have been granting authority to him because he has built relationships of trust where now he's kind of untouchable in a lot of ways. I won't say that in 100%. Anything could happen, but but people listen to Dereje, and it's, for such a time as this, and the culture has changed in that prison.
Can I add real quick to that? Just this was one of the big takeaways for me of like something that just made sense when I got there that did not make, even though I asked Dereje a lot of questions and I was trying to understand, I was like, okay, so you have a ministry, but wait, do you run the prison? But it's like it's a state prison, it's a city, like what, like, who are you and what do you do? Like, how does this work exactly? And it's the thing I saw it in action, it just made sense to me once I got there, was it's just a situation that would never happen in America in terms of the prison is, operated by the government, but they've basically just said to Dereje, hey, come in here and help us out. And they're just asking him to do that, right? He didn't sign a piece of paper. He didn't sign a contract saying these are the terms of this. I'm not a contractor coming in under these parameters, and he's not getting paid. It's just, hey, we think you could do something here. Would you come and try and do something here? So just totally foreign to, like the way I would think about what could happen at a prison here, but it's just something that makes sense in the culture there, but also just because of Dereje's unique relationships and position there.
So Dereje or Tim or Phil, can you speak to the idea that now the kids are out of the old prison and they're in the new prison, and the big picture goal was that that property was going to be turned over to LEP, and then LEP was going to develop even a bigger picture for making the gospel look really real for these kids by way of training them and helping them out. So tell us where that's at this point.
Okay. Now we finished another war, and we have another one. Before Bob, and before they come, I went there, to take over the building and the title or things. But currently there is another one, and last time when I went, after move, we want to take over, and we want to use it for that one for ourselves. Top of that also, and we put fence the prison, and we put big gate and to secure it, and nobody to go there to stay. But our dream, my things, all sooner and later, we take over that compound. We use it vocational and teaching Bible.
Yeah, real quick. There's a bigger vision there, right? So it's been a huge step to transfer kids over to the new facility, but there's future uses planned for the old facility, and part of the big picture here is a hope to have vocational training for these kids, right, and use that facility as a place where they can learn skills, and then also do other things related to learning Bible and other possibilities.
Yeah, just another thing that we've been learning along the way is, so once they get out of the prison, a couple of things happen. One is how are they going to make a living? So they need job skills, some kind of trade. And so that's what he's wanting to do with the old facility. But that's still a possibility, but the government has let him know, hey, we're going to use that old facility for a little bit to hold political prisoners. And so that's what we need to pray for right now, is that that facility, or something we haven't even imagined, will happen so that he can do the next part of this vision, which is when they get out, what happens for them? And they need to be prepared to have skills, and so that's a prayer. Another prayer is that in the new facility, which currently has about 75 youth in it and can hold up to 300 to 400, I asked, do you think that's going to get filled up? And he said, well, right now everybody's distracted. They're not arresting kids for minor crimes and misdemeanors and things right now because they have another war to be concerned about. But he said every time there's just a little lull in a war, then it's like, okay, you're going to jail, you're going to jail, you're going to jail, you're going to jail. And then, so I said, how many do you think will be in there? He said 600. You could just picture it being overflowing again. And so that's a prayer too, is that, yes, that there will be peace, but when when there's peace, there's a lot more arrests. And when there are arrests, then there are 2 nurses and 2 coaches that are really like counselors working for LEP at the prison right now. But can you imagine when the numbers increase? So that's a prayer as well, is what to be ready for that when that happens. In Ethiopia, anything can happen anytime.
Also, that compound, we need it badly because all of us who work with kids for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, the kids completely change, become like good Christian, good student, good everything. And if they get chance, they can be somebody like leader even. But the problem, when they release them, they don't have anywhere to go. Sometimes the parents, they said, I'm not taking him. Whatever you want to do, because my husband is, sick with, something disease, and the other daughter, she's pregnant, with 2 daughters. Me by myself go labor working. I don't bring him. Even if we bring him, he's not stay here. He's going back. So we don't have place to for him. So if we have that compound important like this kind special kids, we can train them and give them chance to be someone. And second one, everybody exciting the new prison. And me, I hate that big prison because it is too fancy, too expensive, and it costs a lot of money. Like giving for poor person and to manage like Bentler or some things who don't have money means a ruin, because sooner or later it will be my problem and expensive glass. One room they have 10, 15 light. Before we have hard time to change 2 light. Now we have to think 1,000 light to manage. So everybody they think, why you hate these things? Because it costs me money. I know, everybody they say later, now it is great, wonderful things. I know government after the building, government is not building. Red Cross they build that building, and Red Cross they give for government, and government they put kids, and soon later they said, hey, Dereje, this is your problem. We don't care. So I hate that building, but I don't know what to do. Just I have to deal with it, sooner or later.
I love that because, as Dereje is saying, with a gift comes responsibilities and stress. It's just the reality of it, right? And one of the wonderful things about Dereje is, again and again, God puts something in his lap, and he could say no, because he knows pretty quickly there's going to be a lot of work that comes with this gift. But he says yes. He says, okay, I don't know how to do this. I don't understand what I'm going to do with this and how I'm going to serve these girls or these boys or whatever it is. And it's very terrifying because I feel like I'm just, making things up as I go sometimes. But he says yes.
Dereje, it's so good to see you. Really good to see you. I just want to say, before I ask a question, is that you're one of the bravest and faith-filled people that I know on this earth. I mean that. You're a great example for me and everybody else in here. You go where God leads and you don't even know where that is, but you just say yes. Thank you. I did want to ask you if the soccer group that you had going before, the Lion of the Tribe of Judah, I think it was called, the soccer, is that still going, or what's become of that? Thank you.
Yeah, the soccer is important because the soccer, they play a week 4 or 5 times. The same time, they learn about Bible 4 or 5 times. Before they play, they learn Bible and they play. That is, for kids, more than food, more than anything, says soccer is important inside prison or out of prison, wherever place. So soccer, it continues forever.
But it's still happening outside too.
Yes, okay. Yes, China camp, so our staff, they go there, they do big. But I'm not involved like before a lot because most of them, they got job. Most of them, they get married. Most of them, they have small business. And most of them, they change all things. I don't need to be there, but our staff, they go. But my focus on the juvenile prison, it need full attention because every time they bring new person, and we have to keep up, with the older one, because new prison, when they come, he come with a lot of problem, skin disease, TB, all kind of things, and we have to separate them, treat all those things, and later we join them. Even I have to go more often, otherwise sometimes our staff, even they get tired or they become always continue things, they fed up and they stop. So that is, things.
About the soccer ministry outside, that does continue, but part of the reason why it continues is because Dereje raised up leadership. And so that's something that's going on without him having to be on the ground, which is great. So he's built a whole culture around that. And that is what he's doing inside the prison, too. It's just there are other pieces that need to be in place for that, right? And because it's government running it. But just real quick, I'll insert about what something else that you could pray for at both the youth juvenile prison, but also the girls' home. They need medicine. And so that's something he's hoping to bring on his next trip is medicine for the nurses. They just run simple things like ibuprofen is just out. So now there's going to be just months and months that nobody can have ibuprofen. And so there are lists of other things that none of us are medical experts and know what kinds of things. So we're seeking that, right? And what else needs to go in suitcases that he's on his next trip. But it's things like that, and then also when this happens, we want to be ready for be able to make some asks to you that we can't make right now, which is like there's going to be a time when we say, look, we've got that compound, the old facility is ready, political prisoners are out of there, and we're ready, or whatever the other thing is that God does to make this possible, and we're going to need 2 to 3 years is what he's saying, is somebody who could commit to teaching a trade. And then train just a few people. I think you said, like, if I just had people training, if they just gave 2 years of their life to train in a trade that is needed there with tools that they can get there, and then they train them properly, because nobody makes a chair that doesn't break in Ethiopia. But if you could train these folks properly, then and every time that they learn, they have to train somebody else. Then they'll train 100, and those train 100,000. And so that's really the goal, is that we need. He can't make that ask today, because there's political prisoners being put in that old compound. But what we want to be able to come to is to say, look, we want you to contribute in some way, in resources, something that will help that happen. And so when the green light is given, we all know what that means. So.
This is kind of goes along with the soccer thing, but also, Dereje, now that you're here in the States for a while and you're going back and forth, can you talk more about the team of folks that you have working and holding up the loose ends while you're not there? You spoke about at the prison you have just a few coaches and a few teachers, but do you have other Christians in churches there that are supporting or are filling the role to hold down the activities that you have planned?
I ask, Church of Christ, Addis Ababa, we have some church, and, I invite them to come, to help. But they ask me a lot of things. They need, transport, they need, salary, and they need, different need. I told them, hey, just to come, teach Bible. They refuse. Also, who's, support them, from state, they don't want to have anything with me. And, why? I don't know. They think, I'm not doing, properly, or I don't know what they think, I didn't ask them. So nobody helped me. But our staff, we have, 2 nurses, two who graduate from university, psychiatrist and psychology. I don't think they have, enough, training, but they help. And we have, two soccer coach, and we have two people, two room, four, and two is paid full time, two is part time. They sleep with prisoner. They have them inside room. They sleep there, and to watch them not to fight and not to steal, not for them safety. Also guard outside there, and not to come inside things. We have those stuff. All of them, those guys, they know Bible enough to help, a new Christian. They are not professional teacher, but they teach Bible. And, also I need someone to come, train our staff well. We don't have, Bible college in Ethiopia. I cannot take them there, or I cannot send them. Only they have, Christian college, Orthodox college kind things. Yeah, because I'm not Orthodox, they are not take my student. And there is, Kenya to send them there, to train them, but expensive passport also. I was not thinking because I have here a million problem, and just read them Bible and teach them Bible. That is. But I wish I send them Kenya, Church of Christ college, or Uganda. If they study 2-3 years and come back Ethiopia, we can make big difference. But I was not thinking because I have a million here in my hand and doing those things. But that is my dream, my wish.
So obviously, God's going to continue to use Dereje the way that God uses Dereje. But maybe embedded in what he just said is he needs some partners on the ground, and to do things that one person can't do. So that's something that we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But yeah, religious organizations don't want to work with someone who doesn't have all the credentials, but God's clearly given him all the credentials he needs, right? So he needs ways of making disciples who make other disciples who make other disciples that don't require all this religious mess that people think they need in order to partner with a guy like Dereje.
I was just wondering the ages of the kids. You mentioned a boys' prison and a girls' orphanage, but you didn't mention a boys' orphanage.
There is boys' orphanage, and they told me they don't want me to go there because the boys' orphanage place is too rough, and they are too mean, and it is too dangerous there, to handle. And I didn't try because already I'm here. Also at the age, juvenile prison, one time, 6 years old they brought when I was there, up to 17 years old they come there. And girls dorm orphanage area from, I think, 7 up to 20 years they are there.
I think one thing to add to this, sorry, when Bob and I were there, the prison was only boys. Is it still? It's still going to remain that way, even with 500 to 600 people. Do you think, or do you think they're going to have a spot for girls?
Yeah, the prison, the juvenile prison, there is boys, the big compound, the girls is outside. And, when you guys, when you come, just we are close to finish the war, almost close the war, so they didn't arrest anybody. They didn't bring any girls. But that time, I think we have 2 girls, I think. And, there is girls' dorm the other side. Normally, we had, girls like one time 10 girls. Also, we fight for girls, to release them early.
because we don't want them to stay there, because we have, young guard paid by government. Also, the girls and growing there, we don't want them to stick around because one mistake, it causes big problems. So always we focus the girls, and they bring them even for 3 years, 4 years, and we are trying them to release them within 6 months or 1 year. And we're successful doing those things.
Yeah. Well, I had a question as to so for us here, like, and we always do. We appreciate Dereje and Mindy and the boys. How does Tyler Street partner more with what your guys' goals are? I mean, I hear medicine's needed, prayer for medicine, prayer for the facilities, and that's scary with political stuff going on, really scary. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited for Dereje and Mindy to have both of you guys. That's so cool to have you guys here. But then as you guys are meeting up and talking, how do like churches like us that I'm sure there's people here that would love to go to Ethiopia, but if we can't go to Ethiopia, how do we help you guys right now? And I do appreciate us prepping, things are coming. So that's one question I have for us is as you guys leave and we communicate more, what can we do here at home?
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quick, if anyone does want to go to Ethiopia, Dereje will take you. There's come talk to him. We can make that happen. I think the thing that Dereje shared with me before, I mean, prayer is a huge thing. There's a couple prayer requests you said of one for his upcoming trip. So he's got a really big trip coming up because he's going back to Ethiopia soon, but he's also going to Uganda. He's going to Kenya and Nigeria for a funeral for someone from our church, actually. And so please pray for him and his safety. Part of that trip is going to be seeing potential new needs in all those places, but particularly Uganda. He's going back to some places that he hasn't been in a long time, reconnecting with a church there that he hasn't seen in like 15 years. Yeah, and there's some situations with refugees in Uganda that he's basically going to check out and see, like, okay, what's going on here? What can I help with? So prayer for that trip. Dereje and Mindy, before we came, did emphasize also, please just pray for the war in Ethiopia. Please don't forget that in your prayers, right? That it's hard to fathom, 600,000 people in the last few years at least, right? That's so much more than the numbers we're talking about. Obviously, Israel is very fresh, but so much more than the numbers there, or even the conflict in Ukraine, right? Just the numbers we're talking about are staggering. There's so much going on there, and obviously that has such huge ripple effects on what Dereje is trying to do. So prayer for those two things. And I think Phil put it very well. There's going to be some very specific needs coming up with ways to try and use the facility, the prison more in the future. That will have some specific asks for, I think.
Okay. I mean, we need a lot of things, to help, one, we don't have car. Sometimes, people, prisoners that die there, we have to take the body to village. This juvenile prison in Addis Ababa for all over Ethiopia. Whatever place some kids do some crime or something's mistake or something, they brought him Addis Ababa. When they release him, we have to take him. Government, they release him, okay, you go. But we are the one we take, who come from village, we have to, our staff, they have to take. Always we pay transport. Sometimes some kids, they took, 2 days they have to travel to give for family. And one day they slept in small hotels, not hotel, just some place. And when they wake up morning, the kids disappear because he don't want to go home. And they have to find weeks it takes them. And we have a million problems, so I don't know. One thing's, if you come, I want to invite everybody. And instead of me, we have these things, that things, I'm exhausted, same problem. If you come and see things, you can come Ethiopia, you can come Kenya, you can come Uganda, the same kind of problem, the same kind of challenge, also the same kind of people they need about Bible and Jesus, all things. So just come, see it, and whatever God put in your heart, you want to work Kenya or Uganda or Ethiopia, you can do whatever you feel. I mean, I cannot say, I need these things. And it is like, a million hole. I don't know which one I talk. So anything, even second and start from second and close, anything, it helps there.
Part of what we're going to be doing with Dereje is getting those things out of him and getting them to you.
No, I mean, we should probably shut it down. But you guys are sticking around for the afternoon a little bit? Awesome. So I'd encourage you guys to talk to Dereje, Tim, Phil, all these guys about what's going on. We do have lunch downstairs. I'm going to turn it over to Michael. If we can give them a round of applause just for doing this for us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, church, for being here with us. If that doesn't get your heart going and your mind just stir you up, I don't know what will. I just appreciate Tim and Phil being able to be here with Dereje and the way that you guys support him, because, like he's pointed out, he needs more help. And I'm just thankful that you guys are stepping into that, and I hope that we step more into that together. That's why, if you're like, why 20,000? Because we want to raise more money, not just, this is what we've been doing for the last couple of years. We're raising more money to support lighting the Ethiopian path better. We're raising more money to serve and support other missions better. We don't want to just give them, here's a little bit. You might be able to afford light bulbs this year. Like, we want to do so much more. So, church, if you didn't hear anything else, what I heard a lot about Dereje that I love is don't rush off because he's going to try and recruit you. Hang out, talk to him, hear more about this amazing mission. And if you didn't hear anything else, I just hear that Dereje is where he sees something, he does something, and then he just says yes. Even if you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I say yes. So what we've talked about the last several months of what's your next here in our mission to be a meaningful Christ-centered community for people, or if you felt stirred and you're like, I'm going to go to Ethiopia next year, be careful which trip you choose, because it sounds like he would take you to all 4 of those countries. So maybe just start with Ethiopia. I don't know. It's up to you. But thanks you, church, for being here with us. Let's pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the hands and feet of those like Dereje and Mindy. God, thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to be a part of their lives and just to see how you are moving in them and through them, just having a willing spirit to say yes to you. And God, help us to be inspired by his life, by the work that you are doing, and that we are faithful and say yes to you here in our home, and if you call us elsewhere, to say yes there. God, thank you for the food today. Thank you for this church. Thank you for bringing us together, and bless our time of fellowship the rest of this day. And we pray all this in your son's name. Amen.